and welcome to this first webinar of our new Rockstrs series on humanity v technology. How will tech adoption accelerate the professionalisation of the industry? Well, what is a rockstar, you might ask? Watch this video and find out. Rockstars, the innovators, the trendsetters, the non-conformists. What is it that makes these people stand out? Revered within their fields, rockstars break new ground, galvanise their teams, and constantly challenge the status quo. But most importantly, when times are tough, rockstars face adversity head-on and lead their way towards a recovery. If music makes the world go round, the rockstars keep it spinning. Join us from the 15th of September for Rockstars. That gives you a little bit of a taster of what to expect today. In terms of webinar guidelines, I'd like to advise you to please keep your sound on mute and your camera off if you're not speaking in the discussion. The overall discussion should take around 45 to 50 minutes with a Q&A at the end. I'm also being ably assisted by my colleagues Joe and Justin today. And all of the details that you see on screen will be posted in the Zoom function chat below. And just to remind you that a recording will also be sent round to everyone after the discussion so that you can go over all the points in your own convenience. Here are all the key discussion points that we're going to be discussing with our panel very shortly. Justin? And of course, this is all a precursor to the inaugural Urban Living Festival that my company, International Hospitality Media, is organising at Tobacco Dock in London on the 25th to the 26th of November 2020. And we believe it's going to be a really good event for the hospitality and real estate sectors to unite and talk about how all of these industries are converging very rapidly. And to celebrate the launch of ULF, we're also offering attendees a very exciting 40% off tickets using the code that you can see on the screen. That's ULF40. And now, to get to the important matters, let me introduce my panel, starting please with Terry. Take it away.
I'm Terry from Toronto, Canada. My properties are in the United States. I'm the founder of Vacation Rental Software Guy and Anner Island Beach Rentals Incorporated.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Terry. Margot, please would you go next and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Margo Schmorack, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Hostfully. We are a software company that makes property management software and also digital guidebooks. I'm based in San Francisco too.
Thank you very much, Margo. And next up, Michael from Operto.
Hi, I'm Michael Driedger. I'm the CEO of Operto Guest Technologies. We're a software platform that connects with booking systems like Hostfully, and as well as IoT devices to essentially automate a lot of the tasks that would allow you to, keep you from providing the human touch.
And last but no means least, Filipa, take it away.
Hi, thank you for organizing this panel. I'm Filipa. 10 years ago, I found Rent for Rest, a Portuguese property management company. I always had a problem with doing the same tasks over and over again. So since the beginning of my company, I start search for the best technology to automate tasks. I must say 10 years ago, that would include spreadsheets and automate spreadsheets. Now things are a little bit different. I also love teaching and sharing information. So 2 years ago, I started teaching here in Portugal.
Thank you very much, Filipa. So for context, we have pre-COVID and we have post-COVID. Firstly, pre-COVID, at the back end of 2019, AJL Consulting's Simon Lehman made the interesting prediction that the tech space would consolidate quicker than the short-term rental space in 2020. We'll come back to that shortly, and we also have Rentals United's Global Short-Term Rental Tech Report for 2020. Post-COVID, news from both Hostfully and Operto, so very relevant to two of our speakers today. Plus, I thoroughly recommend you read our CEO Piers Brown's piece on how coronavirus will democratise tech in hospitality and real estate moving forward. So now starting with the discussion. So my first question revolves around how can you establish a guest relationship and not lose that personal touch? So Filipa, I'm going to start off with you. What, if you answer that question, but also what do you think are the main benefits of personalization? How do you keep that going whilst establishing that guest relationship?
So we are all people. So as people, we like to feel special. And our business, in order to make our guests feel they are unique, we need to create touch points with them. We can do this in many ways, like meeting the guests in person, welcome baskets, suggesting a great experience or a great restaurant, having the heaters on the winter, the AC on the summer. But at the end of the day, what we need is to show that we care with them and they stay. And if you on this way, you can create a relationship with them. I truly believe the importance of a smiling at the check-in and on the check-in process, but with COVID and all the social distance measures, I think we can use technology to prepare all the information, reduce the time on the personal check-in, or even if we cannot do the personal check-ins, we can make a phone call or even a video call. This moment we are all used to online things, so having a online call with a guest can create this touch point. I think we need to use our imagination to go this extra mile.
I see you've already mentioned the C word, COVID, but you're a property manager with Rent for Rest, and you're also on the board of the Portuguese Vacation Rental Association. So how do you think now you're going that extra mile to establish all of those factors?
With the guests, it's the way that I not losing the personal touch, because it will be difficult to if we lose the personal touch and automate everything and don't be there, don't show that we are a person, that they are a person, it will be different. On the association, we will improve the teaching part, the sharing the knowledge and sharing the cleaning protocols to make the guests feel safe and secure as a destination.
And Terry, you're a property manager as well, so I'm sure you'll be able to share some other interesting insights into this. But extending on that question, what tools do you specifically use for personalization on your website?
Well, for me, what I'm trying to provide with every guest is, I ask myself this question: how can I make this person feel important? And you can't make somebody feel important if you're automating every touch point. So I spend half my day on the telephone. You know, the 100-year-old telephone. That's my best friend. Video messaging, bomb. It's a Google Chrome extension. Pretty hard to get more personalized when you're sending somebody. You're putting yourself out there. You're sending a video of yourself. You're talking to these people. It's well received. You know, I use every mode of communications. You know, text messaging, regardless of age or gender, worldwide, people prefer text messaging. So, you know, it's a mix of everything. You know, it's your CRM, it's your text messaging, it's your video, it's your phone. It's just using everything that's at your disposal, but never ever letting it get to the point where you've automated everything and there's no human touch. And calling the guest is big, but calling them when they're at the property, you know, you've checked them in, you have their money, you never want to give the impression that, oh, you've got their money, you really don't care. Phoning them, talking to them, making sure they're finding the restaurants okay, activities, tours, you know, just it's critically important to talk to people.
Thank you. And Michael, with Operto, what problems would you say you've encountered with guest interactions when it comes to this issue of personalization?
I think it's I think I agree with Terry. I mean, my first degree was in archaeology, and I always think, you know, a tool's a tool, right? Like a hoe, whatever, that's what they are. And tools and technology have allowed us to have more time. They allowed us the culture of creating language and writing, etc. And it's really how you use those tools that makes the most difference. So we like. I'll give actually a hotel example, just because it came to my mind, is that there's a hotel that we have in Toronto, and it's actually one of the best guest experiences I can think of, because usually when you walk into a hotel, the problem is they take your stuff and their head down and they're typing, their head down, and there's no eye contact. There's no human interaction. So and again, like a smart lock is a tool. So the smart lock allows you to sort of say, hey, you got everything you need, you're good. And so you're open, you're actually having a conversation, you're not doing data entry. It's not a transactional experience, it's a real human experience. Person might say, I'm good, they go up to their room, it's fine. Otherwise, they might sit down at the bar or at the coffee shop and have a coffee, right? Technology actually allows you to spend more time with people, right? That's the whole reason for it. It's a bit liberating. Like Filipa said in the beginning, like even the Excel spreadsheet at the beginning was extremely liberating, just because it can automate a lot of the math. So anything, and there's certain, and I totally agree with Terry, like you automate some parts, but the actual, I call it the omotenashi, which is a Japanese word for hospitality. You can't automate that piece, because it's a real human to human sort of connection that you have to make with someone. And the tech just allows you more time to figure out how to do that well.
So in conclusion, very much about interaction rather than transaction, you'd say.
Oh yeah, it's meant to be that, right? It's so that the guests can choose when they want to interact with you. It might be a check-in, it might not be. It might be after they've taken a shower, like gotten the kids in a room, but you know, whatever the case may be, right? It's so it allows it a little bit to be more on their terms, which is why people like texting over phone calls, right? It allows you to respond in time and not immediacy. That's why texting has become so popular.
And Margo, if you could bring it all together, what do you think consumers are now expecting from property managers?
Well, I think the key with your question is now. I've seen a huge sea change in what consumers expect from property managers. And I think that if you think 5 years ago, the level and degree of personalization that is expected from consumers and everything related to booking a vacation rental has totally changed. People expect to see photos, tons of information about the property. They want to see pricing. They want to see all the information about what they're going to book like they would in a hotel. And that's really changed over the last 5 years. So there's a heightened level of consumer expectations. And I would argue that technology is just trying to kind of keep up with a lot of that change. But taking it from another angle, if I'm a property manager, I think of the guest experience and managing that from like 3 different lenses. One, like a lot of, like Filipa and Terry and Michael mentioned, I think about it in terms of making someone feel important or safe, or like trustworthy, you know, like you can be trustworthy to them. And that has to do with like, I just paid you money. Are you going to actually follow through with the service? Or I just arrived here. Can I actually get into this place? I have all my luggage here and like, you know, like those kind of moments, right? Like you have to be there at the right time. And that requires automation. And it also requires a thoughtful approach to the channels that you're using and the timeliness of it, right? So that's complicated. Then there's another angle which has to do with content. And Michael's company, Operto and Hostfully, we have really a cool integration where this kind of comes to light. So I'm going to explain the example, which is that when you arrive at a property for the first time now, Hostfully and Operto can integrate to provide you with the lockbox code for that property at the right time. And it will appear in the guidebook at the right time, and it will stop working when you're done with your stay. So from the consumer experience, it feels seamless, and they feel like they're getting the content that they need when they need it, right? And then the third thing has to do with really the foundation of Hostfully, the company. So when David and I founded this company, it was based on his experience as an Airbnb superhost, talking with his guests when they came to visit him. And what he realized was that creating a really crappy Word document guidebook allowed him to not talk about like the directions to get to the restaurant around the corner. And it allowed him to focus on the higher value conversations, which have to do with like the hard questions or alleviating their top anxiety, right? And that's where like Terry, you know, what you said comes in, and you have to be there. You have to be there physically for them. Like you have to feel like this is the human part. And what we've realized is that technology is required to allow you to do that high value interaction with your guests. If you don't have the automation, which by the way, a lot of companies don't. I was just looking at some data when we did our hospitality study last year, 10% of companies are not using any sort of tool to communicate with their guests. And I think that's a miss. But if you do use a tool, whether it's texting, digital guidebooks, you know, automated customer support, whatever it is, you are allowing yourself to get to kind of like the higher level, the higher quality of the guest experience that I don't think you can achieve otherwise. So that has all been accelerated with COVID, especially, and also with the huge change in consumer expectations.
You answered my follow-up question actually, but I think our audience is agreeing with you. Andrew Wheel there in the comments saying tech should be an enabler to great service and not a replacement for the human touch. So I want to move on to the importance of picking the right property management system. I think we've got the perfect man for the job here with Terry. And when we were talking before, you said that picking the right PMS is about getting the meat out of the system rather than the bells and the whistles. So what do you mean by that exactly, and what are the advantages of such?
Okay, first of all, a PMS is extremely complicated. It's confusing, it's intimidating. I think if you recognize the core features of what a good PMS is, and because people generally, they would use about 50% of what a PMS can do. It's just so powerful. That's just a fact. But if you can identify what the core values of a good PMS are, I think it would uncomplicate it in such a big way.
And you said that the PMS is your strongest channel manager, I believe, as well. So why is it so important for streamlining operations in that way?
Well, we're probably going to talk a lot about streamlining operations here, but when looking for a PMS, the very first thing I look at, and I suggest everyone should look at, is distribution. And the distribution should come, the strongest channel manager is your PMS. And the reason that I say that, I can start any demo, I've did hundreds of demos, I can start any demo, ask one question before the demo starts: how many direct connections do you have with the big five? Booking.com, Expedia, Airbnb, Vrbo, TripAdvisor. Any PMS that has 4 of them will, I can predict within 96% accuracy. If you have 4 of them, you're going to score around 100 in our algorithm, 100 points. Less than 4, you will score 75 or worse. The difference in our algorithm between 100 and 75 is 2 different planets. They're just 2 PMSs that they don't even compete against each other. You know, so an example I could give would be Avantio. It's the most beautiful thing you would ever see. It's they have so many direct connections. They have niche websites. They have regional websites, and a channel manager does not exist. And it's very hard to find a better PMS than Avantio. You know, I think the future, though, is going to change, and Google's going to change that. It's really going to complicate it, that you're going to need a channel manager. I think the gateway to Google goes through a channel manager and not a PMS. And the models that I look at right now that are already there would be Hostfully, Maxton, Streamline. Track will be there by the end of the year. That you're going to need strong PMS connections, integrations, but you're going to need at least 2, probably 3 channel managers to be successful going forward.
I have a feeling that Google will be coming up later in the conversation.
Yeah.
I see that Kyle Davis from Avantio is listening today, so he'll be very glad that you mentioned them. Margot, when we were talking before as well, you'd said that you'd seen a huge change in API connections. So companies developing this tech that is fully integrated, why do you think this? Why is this sea change being so recognizable?
It's really exciting, first of all. I just wanted to say that, like, to be part of an industry where it's maturing in this way is really fun as a technology leader, and also just like being here because people are able to do new things that they were not able to do before. I think we're seeing it for 2 reasons. Number one, Terry kind of alluded to this, but the actual channels themselves have now opened up ways to communicate with them that are more sophisticated than ever before. So I remember when we first founded Hostfully in 2015, 2016, and like Airbnb didn't have an API that we could integrate with, it just wasn't possible. And now it's possible for all of the property management softwares out there. And so like that's, they've done a really good job of making that really instantaneous. Similarly with the other channels like Booking.com and Vrbo, those are now available to integrate with in more sophisticated ways. And I'm sure property managers everywhere are asking, like, when is Vrbo and Booking.com, how does messaging work with them? And can I modify this specific fee or taxes? Like there's all these details that we're all kind of like figuring out together, but it's overall the big shift has happened there. So the availability from the channels and just the connectivity there. There are also technologies within the way APIs work that have changed the industry in general. And this just is like software. It's kind of like saying like the internet exists now and it didn't before. I mean, it's just that API protocols, API connectivity has changed. And we're seeing the ability for companies to connect more easily. And what the outcome is that you see a lot more specialization. So property management softwares before, when they were built 6 to 10 years ago, they had to do everything for everybody because there just wasn't a way for them to easily connect with a dynamic pricing tool, with a home automation platform, with a marketing platform. Right now, we can specialize. So at Hostfully, we're taking a different approach along with some of the other companies that Terry mentioned. And we're saying like, we're going to be really good at this kind of core property management software piece, which is around managing your property and reservation data and your customer data. And then we're going to offer like a little bit of functionality in other areas, but we're really going to do that. And we're going to do the channel management piece really well. And then we're going to work with the best in class providers of other solutions. And you can look at, to so many industries to see how this has worked well, including like Apple and, with the iPhone. I actually helped to launch the first iPhone developer program at Apple. So when I was at Apple for the 1.5 years that I was there, it was not very long. There were no apps on top of the iPhone, right? And now we can't even imagine a world in which there was no apps on top of the iPhone. So this is like a very natural progression that we're seeing from being a solve it all with one software to a let's focus on what we're really good at kind of world. And I think for the property manager, it's so overwhelming because like Terry said, like it's overwhelming enough to choose a property management software. And then it's even more overwhelming to figure out all these other partners to work with. So it's painful. And I'm not trying to like brush that under the rug. That is a very difficult process. But I think that we're seeing a really big change and it's going to be better for everybody in the long run because we can get more specificity around the technology that we need that we haven't been able to get before.
If you don't mind, if I'd like to add, and I agree, and then just touch on Terry's point that distribution is so important. It's so important, especially now when things change a lot. So for example, we had a client in Japan who, international travel completely dried up. So he had to rely 100% on domestic travel, but in Japan, all domestic travel is booked through Rakuten, which surprised me. I always thought of Rakuten as sort of like an e-commerce, like Amazon of Japan thing. But he had to quickly find a channel manager that was connected to that in order to be able to get any kind of bookings because it was largely shut down. And you'll see, we're seeing lots of clients that are doing that. And so the faster you can the more distribution channels that you have at your disposal through a PMS, is really, really critical just for you to personalize, for you to go after niche markets, et cetera, et cetera. It's sort of, actually, I really like what Margot said too. High value versus low value human interactions actually should be the way we're talking about this, rather than humanity versus technology, because it's about how quickly we can pivot to market changes and personal preferences of people. And I think that, like, and to Margot's point also, is I don't think that's a new thing. I think all this did was put it into overdrive. I mean, people were ordering food on their phones long before this happened. It put the phone and ordering and Zoom and all of these things just in hyperdrive. That's all it really did.
Thank you, Michael. Let's just head back to Margot's point about, let's ask Filipa, as a property manager herself, you know, is it overwhelming? Like Margot said, why is it so crucial to be choosing suitable software, in your opinion?
Yes, in my opinion, it's overwhelming. Last year I needed to change PMS for some reasons, and I saw again how overwhelming the decision can be, even if you know the market, and even if you know the companies, and even if you know what you are looking for, because those days you have a lot of different options. Just considering the main options, you need to consider your company size. Like if you are a small company that wants to grow to a bigger company, if you are a small company that want to keep the size as a small company, or if you, your investment, if you want a flat rate or if you want a booking percentage, you need to decide if you have a lot of staff that will use the software, you don't have staff, if you want an all-in-one solution or one solution that connects. So having, just for start, there are a lot of different options. And now, as Michael said, we need to add the 2020 new options. It's like, it just doesn't need to connect with Booking, Airbnb, VRBO. It needs to connect with niche websites, with midterm websites. It needs to connect with student websites, with digital nomads websites. So, and it needs to send, if you have discounts, monthly discounts, it needs to send the monthly discounts to the websites, not just the connection, the flat, but also the monthly discounts. And there is also the Booking Direct movement. So you need to consider your own website. How is the experience on your website? The home automation. So there are a lot of things to look at. It was difficult until this year. So now it will be even harder. The good thing is that PMS has a lot of work to do also. So we will keep the work for them. So
it seems to me from the discussion we've had that technology is very much intertwined with providing this consistent guest experience. And Michael, I wanted to ask you next. With your background with the hotel industry, so broadening it out from short-term rentals, but what can we learn from the hotel industry when it comes to consistency of guest experience, standardization, etc.?
Yeah, well, because we're more of like, while we are a software company for the lodging industry, we're more like a prop tech company, which is why we end up working a lot with hotels and motels, but we have a lot of vacation rental partners, and we've run a couple surveys, and I think we all sort of know this, is that the people still, for whatever reason, are overwhelmingly picking hotels over short-term rentals for the future. But right now, the vacation rental industry, short-term rental industry, it's just rocking. And it's because everyone's staycationing and no one wants to be hanging out in a lobby full of other guests, right? You just don't want that. You want to go to a cabin, you want to go to a home, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the consistency problem is hugely problematic. I'll give you an example. So I did a staycation with my family. We went up to Whistler. We were going to stay in a really lovely 2-bedroom place. It was on one, and in Whistler, everything's sort of property managed, like, you're in one property manager's area. And so we just, you get the Expedia booking and you assume that that's where you're going. there's very little instruction in the Expedia booking. And so we go to the property management office, and that is not who is managing this one unit. That one unit, that owner decided they didn't like this property management company, and so they ended up doing it with the hotel. So I had to drive 15 minutes to the hotel to get the door access code, which is a static code. I don't know why that couldn't have been sent to me through email or any means, really. It was buried. So basically I had to drive 15 minutes for him to hand me a piece of paper with a code on it, which is the easiest thing to digitize. Margot's system would do this in nothing, right? And that's a bad guest experience. And that's the scary thing for the consumer is, how do I get in? When will I get in? But with a hotel, you walk into the lobby, there's a guy, it's easy. You know what to expect. The challenge that this industry has to overcome, the vacation rental industry, is that portion. It's the anxiety, right? Of how will I get in? Will there be someone there to greet me, etc. Once you've built trust, though, and the best property managers have tons of rebookings, right? Because they've built that trust and that level of consistency with their customers, and so they end up getting a lot of direct rebookings. But if you don't have a really standardized, clearly laid out process, it's a poor guest experience. I mean, and there's lots of ways to do it wrong. The devil's in the details. You can send out a 15-page contract, right? And then you can send out, and I've had this happen to me, where you get a 15-page contract, and then you also get a 15-page guidebook as 2 different PDFs, and you're looking in your emails as to which is which. So it's really, really, I mean, you want to trickle out info, you want to make sure it's the info at the right time, and you want to make it as standardized as you possibly can.
So I guess the obvious sort of response to that would be, how can we encourage people to go to vacation rentals rather than hotels? And I know you said that you were planning to launch a new product soon. I don't know how much you can divulge about that just yet.
Well, I can't talk too much about it, but basically the idea is it's a very light layer to allow some level of standardization on just the check-in process for now, right? And a lot of the little back-end pieces that are happening. So yeah, that's about all I can really tell you for now. But we've just seen this as this sort of consistent problem that the industry is having in terms of like consumer, because consumers think fairly simply, right? Like there was one stat that said that 95% of consumers want some form of physical distancing now when they do something, right? We ran a survey that said that something like 80% of people wanted to check themselves in. And that's a very much a product of our time and what's happening right now. But that consumer sentiment, I mean, a consumer thinks, I need to be able to get in, there needs to be a bed and a clean washroom. They don't really make like as Filipa said, they don't really see the difference anymore between a hotel and a vacation rental. They have the same sort of view that they're getting about the same kind of thing. So the challenge really is to try to make them feel no apprehension about and that it meets expectation.
Filipa, rent to rest. I read that you personally pick each unique property, you manage every aspect. So by doing that, how do you then seek to deliver a consistent and guest experience across the board?
I try to sit down and write a consistent operational guideline. Then I do lots of inspections. I invest in property maintenance, and I have lots of checklists. And with these 4 points, managing, I have affordable studios, I have designer apartments, but they all use the same guidelines and the same checklists. They are used for cleaning, for utilities that the apartments have, for safety standards. And of course, it's much easier using technology, because with all the checklists, digital, we can make quality control, we can communicate with guests. sometimes we think technology can be expensive. Okay, now I need, but I use something as simple as a Google form. I have lots of checklists on Google Forms. When we visit a property, we just fill the checklist on the Google form. It's free to use. So it's the way we found that it could be more consistent, the experience.
Fantastic. So linking to that, Margot, a large part of Hostfully's offering is its guest guidebooks. So how does that tie into customer experience, and how do you then make that a differentiator at the same time?
Yes, so this was the founding idea of Hostfully, actually, which was that we felt that we could create a structured digital guidebook, which is kind of like a mini website for each property, that would service as the place where the guest can go to get important information about the rental. And I just want to describe it for a second, and then I'll answer the question. So the way the guidebook works is it's branded however the property manager wants. So it can be like your color and your brand and your logo. The first thing the guest sees, first of all, it's a website that works well across any device. So if you look at it on a desktop, it looks beautiful. If you look at it on a mobile device, which is the most common use case, it looks really nice. And it displays, the first thing the guest sees is the welcome message. So it can be a personalized message for that guest. It could be a personalized message for that property, or it could just be a standard message, depending on how you want to set it up. And it has the contact information for the host or the property manager so that you can call them if you need to. And then the next part of it is the arrival information, which includes Wi-Fi, which is like the most important thing. That's what people need right away when they get there. And of course, like the door code and other ways to actually access the property. And then it has a section with home information. So this is like, how do I open the blinds and work the laundry? And basically as a property manager, it's like, how do I make sure this guest doesn't break my stuff, right, when they're trying to use it? And hopefully reduce some of the questions that I'll get around how to use the stuff in the property. And then the third section is local recommendations. So that has, like, we found that, local restaurants is the top recommended question that guests have. So it includes like mostly restaurants and cafes and grocery stores and things like that. And then depending on the rental, we've seen some really creative subcategories there for like things that are important in the specific region that you're in, whether it's museums or parks or other, ice cream shops that are really amazing in your specific locale. So that's an area where you kind of do the fun stuff. You can also include tours and, other things that are cool too. And then the last section is the departure information. And so the way this website works is there are tabs across the top and they clearly label each of those sections. And so as the guest, the best way that the guidebooks work is when there's personalization at the front, because then you kind of train the guest to go back to the guidebook first. So if they have any questions, they go there first to see if they can find what they need. And if they don't, they also can contact you. So that's how the digital guidebook experience works. Okay, so back to your original question, remind me. I think it's important to describe that first.
How do your guest guidebooks, how do they tie into consumer experience and also act as a differentiator for Hostfully?
Yeah. Oh, well, for Hostfully, we have a really close integration between that and the property management software. But to be honest, and maybe like I shouldn't say this, you could actually use Hostfully with any property management software. It actually is, it can operate independently. We of course feel that it is a key differentiator for our company, and we develop great relationships with our customers who use our digital guidebook platform because it's so great. But we also don't want to make it an exclusive thing that people have to use our property management software for if they want to access the digital guidebook. So that operates independently. And then, it just creates trust. As Michael, as you were talking before, I was thinking, I wrote this article like a long time ago, 2 or 3 years ago. So before COVID, before we even knew about COVID, about how traveling as a woman, as a single woman, I mean, I'm married, but you know what I mean? Like traveling alone as a woman is a very scary experience. And I think traveling for anyone is a scary experience. You're going to a new place. sometimes you don't know the language, you don't know where you're going. Again, you don't know if you're going to get in, like what happens if you don't get in, do you have a backup plan? I mean, it is very anxiety producing, and that's the thrill of travel. It also makes it really exciting and fun and exhilarating. And now with COVID, it's like that times 100, right? Like, not only was travel exciting before, it is like really exciting now. Exciting means scary, right? And so I mean scary in a good way, in that we can help alleviate people's fears. So I think now we're seeing property managers use the digital guidebook in new ways that we haven't seen before. Like, one thing that we all need to do is to publish the cleaning standards. So Filipa, like, if you have a consistent, process that you're using for your properties, I'm sure you include like something today around what cleanliness standards you use, and the digital guidebook is a place to put that. So the guidebook is just a tool, but when I'm thinking about what content should be included in any guidebook, I'm thinking really about the anxiety of travel for the consumer, and how do we help them alleviate their anxieties and bring joy into that experience, which has to do with like feeling comfortable. So yeah, that's where we're at. I mean, I can't believe I can't believe where we are now, and that travel in vacation rentals is so healthy. When I was looking at some data, we are basically the same. I mean, certain regions occupancy levels are higher, certain regions are lower, certain areas, a length of average stay is longer, certain areas is lower. But in general, the numbers are pretty consistent, which is remarkable. I mean, the entire travel industry has come to a screeching halt right now. And vacation rentals, had this crazy super low occupancy rates for property managers, and then super high ones as all this pent up demand came back into the industry. But overall, if you look out at future bookings data, we are very consistent with previous years, which is just amazing. I mean, flat is the new up here. So we're doing great. And it's really fun to be in a place where there's continued movement and travel, and we get to continue to iterate on some of these fun challenges together.
And I guess something that is also very exciting, potentially exciting for the industry, is the impact of Airbnb's IPO. So, Terry, what do you make of the IPO? And I guess now we're also in this period of economic downturn. Why do you think real estate investors are going to be turning to short-term rentals?
Well, I think you only have to look at, in my opinion here, the short-term rentals is the future right now. You just have to look at right now. Let's just use Europe for example. Let's just talk about COVID numbers. You've got France the other day, 10,000 new cases in one day. Spain, Czechoslovakia. These numbers are higher than they were in April. In my opinion, the darkest days for the hotel industry are ahead of them and not behind them. And vacation rentals will be the big beneficiary of all that change there. As far as getting back to the IPO, I think it's the best thing for every stakeholder involved. First of all, I think it's a hedge against bankruptcy. I think without it, they would run out of cash. So that's the first thing I think there. I think it'd be now time to clean up the mess that is Airbnb. I think we've been better as an industry if we never heard of Airbnb. Our two biggest challenges right now, because only of Airbnb. This isn't aimed at Booking.com. It's not aimed at Expedia. It's not aimed at Vrbo. It's not aimed at TripAdvisor. This is squarely aimed at Airbnb, and that's deregulation and outright bans on vacation rentals. Because of this, we talk about automation. I can guarantee these parties with hundreds of people, the fraud, the shootings, the killing, I can guarantee every person or property manager 100% automates everything. They never, ever, there's no human touch. I think it's a monster out of control. But I think in the end, investors are going to demand a profit. They hate bad publicity, all this stuff that's going on. I think they'll figure out in the end. And when the IPO comes out, I think it could be the steal of the century. And again, I relate this back to the hotel industry. Their darkest days are ahead of them, for sure.
Why do you say it could be the steal of the century? I've seen numerous commentators from the industry saying a similar thing, but from a property manager's perspective,
I think if you looked at pre-COVID, no one said what the valuation is going to be, but I'm pretty confident in saying that it's not going to be anywhere close to the valuation that it would have been without COVID. So I think when these stakeholders buy in, I think that the price is going to be suppressed. I think it's a great company. I think it's the problem is not Airbnb, it's the people who use it. And I just think that in the end, they're going to get this straightened out. They're going to clean up the mess, and it could be like comparing it to Google when they went public, comparing it to Apple when they went public. You know, you look at the rideshare programs that, you know, the bottom fell over. You know, there's all this hype and the bottom fell. I don't see that happening here at all.
And I mean, throughout the last couple of months, I think we can all say that attitudes towards technology within the short-term rental space will have shifted. We're seeing contactless check-ins, voice recognition technology being used a lot more. And Michael, I go back to one of the points I raised just before our discussion, something that Simon Lehman said back end of 2019. I don't want to out Simon here, but he said that the tech space he predicted would consolidate quicker than the short-term rental space. So what's your opinion looking back with retrospect now?
He's probably right, but I would say the jury's still out. I mean, the reason he said that is pre-COVID, there were so many tech companies out there, lots of startups, and like an environment like this is difficult for most startups. So it is likely that a lot will consolidate. But I think it's just as likely that a lot of property managers will also sort of join forces. I mean, you saw that beforehand with Operto, 4 companies becoming a single one with some sort of equity swap. I mean, those kinds of things I think you'll see on both sides. But on the tech side, yeah, there were too many PMSs. There really were really small ones that, and this is actually back to Terry's point, is that trying to do everything, and Margot's point, like literally trying to boil the ocean when it came to like creating a tech stack, which is just impossible, right? Like you can get your integrations really, really solid. Like I said, four really solid direct connections, 2 channel managers managed so that you get really, really good booking systems. Or as Margot's gone down the path of like a really solid PMS and a very strong guidebook, right? Like you can't do trust accounting, but like you can't add everything on and have it be the tool for your entire team. I mean, your accounting team's still going to want to use QuickBooks. Don't try and replace QuickBooks with the accounting tool inside of a PMS. It won't work, right? I think that's the reason why the consolidation will happen, because there were too many to begin with, and a lot of them, like I said, were trying to boil the ocean.
And as this convergence with the hotel space continues, do you believe that people will be opting now for these private space, private rentals over hotels, given the more of an emphasis now on that consistency of standards?
It's really the line between hotels and vacation rentals has been blurring for quite a while. Like we've seen strong numbers, very strong numbers from our vacation rental clients, but we've also seen them from our they're urban hotels, urban resorts, or even like ski resorts or like mountain resorts. They do quite well. They would call themselves more in the hotel category. They're doing actually really, really well. But I agree with Terry, like a New York hotel is struggling, right? Those are definitely brands that are struggling. But like I said, the lines have blurred. We've got lots of mid-market hotels that are doing really, really well. Sort of like select service hotels with no spa, no restaurant, no anything. Kind of like the apartments that you'll find. They're like apartment hotels. Those actually are doing really well from what we're seeing. They led the recovery in the last recession as well. And last 3 recessions that asset class led. This definitely, the vacation rental and apartment and short-term rental market definitely shakes that up a bit because they're even better. in a lot of ways. They're unique inventory, which is kind of what's nice about them. It's really, really good, unique inventory. It's not so cookie cutter. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what shakes out over the next little while.
And I mean, a lot of what we've been talking about today, and you'll be aware of this with technology, a lot of it is about predicting the future. So now with COVID presenting more challenges or opportunities, I'd like you to address this. So I'm going to speak to Filipa first. What are your predictions for the coming 12 months? Do you see more tech adoption being a curse or a blessing, a challenge or an opportunity?
Definitely a blessing, and it will be even more important than before. Here in Lisbon, in an urban market, the tourism, it's still dead. The tourism as we used to know. I think it's the same in cities like Barcelona. I'm not sure in London or Paris, but here the urban tourism doesn't exist. So having the ability to connect with different channels with midterm channels can make a huge difference between zero occupancy and zero revenue to occupancy and revenue. So only this can make, and if you have several properties, making all the ads one by one and updating manually again, it's not a good experience. So also the guests, some will prefer, some don't, but they will expect to have all the information in advance, and they will expect to be able to make a self check-in. So we need also to accomplish the expectations of the guests. But as Terry told, we have this challenge because we need to assure the security, and we have those parties and damage, we have the chargebacks. So we need to, I think technology needs to improve on the security side, because we still need to check if the person that is checking in at the apartment, it's the same that booked, it's the number of person, if it's not a scam. So there's a lot of things to do.
And Terry, the same question to you, but what impact do you think COVID is going to have on this tech adoption and professionalization together?
I think it's two different questions. First of all, it's an opportunity for sure, and we have plenty of tech right now, and it's only going to explode. You just have to look right now. We have smart home automation, we have revenue management, we have channel management. You know, you've got your CRM. We've got all the tools necessary to provide the best guest experience. But what we don't have, and this is our biggest challenge, is our industry has no standards. When you book a hotel, you know what you're getting. You know what to expect when you get there. We are just all over the map. We have people that have no clue about hospitality. You know, when the guests show up, they never know what apprehension would be the word to describe when you're booking a vacation rental. You're never going to get it. So I think the opportunity, we'll never have a better opportunity than right now because of, I keep saying, the hotel industry, their darkest days are ahead of them. We have such an advantage on them with what we have to offer, the uniqueness of it, you know, private entry, no hallways, no lobbies, no elevators, that kind of thing. But we really have to address our standards. Our industry is really lacking there. And that's you talk about professionalism. We need to be as professional as a hotel industry. We need to understand customer service. The product, this is where tech should come second, that the product should come first. So when people arrive, they know what they're getting. There's no surprises. They're confident. And if something goes wrong, they expect good customer service. And I think that's our biggest challenge right now. And it's the biggest challenge right now is certainly not tech for the vacation rental industry.
And Michael, what would you say to what Terry's just said about the days of hotels being darkest ahead, and how does this tie in?
I agree with a lot of what he said, definitely. And they definitely have much lower occupancies right now than vacation rentals. And that's probably going to continue for the next little while until international travel comes back and consumer confidence comes back. But the one thing I would touch on, and sort of related to the Airbnb, I think the future is definitely, I 100% agree, it's the standardization piece. One of the biggest challenges that Airbnb has had is that it's, you know, you can, the rate, you can get anything from a 1-star hostel to a 5-star, you know, vacation rental on Airbnb, and you can't really tell the difference sometimes, and you find out when you arrive. That's been one of their biggest challenges. And that's actually, to Terry's point, is that the vacation rental, like, and so if my hope, I wouldn't say it's my prediction, is that more and more of those they're not all owners. Some owners are really good at hospitality, but my hope is that those people that are not good at hospitality, that do own units, give them over to the property managers that know what they're doing, so that the industry can have this level of consistency that Terry's talking about. I think that will actually start happening. I hope it does, and I hope that is something that Airbnb takes into account, because they seem to be wanting to go the opposite direction, which I actually don't think is the right direction. I think that going back to the host's roots is probably not the way to go in this time that requires so much standardization and confidence. But that's those sort of my predictions.
I'm going to give the last word to Margot. What are your predictions for the next 12 months ahead, and how would Airbnb's IPO play into that, do you believe?
So I agree with what a lot of people are saying, so I'm just going to try to add things as opposed to repeat them. I'll do my best. First of all, what we're seeing from Airbnb is that Airbnb is trying to lean into their biggest asset, which is their brand. And while they have provided a relatively inconsistent experience for travelers a lot of times, and there have been a lot of issues, they have a really strong brand. It's much stronger than Vrbo or Booking.com. And I think, Terry, you're right that like they are needing to IPO. It's not a question. It is going to happen. So they're basically trying to optimize for that right now. And what we're seeing at Hostfully is that they're trying to claim more of the guest experience. So one small thing, but we see it as kind of an indicator for the direction that Airbnb is headed, is that they are no longer providing like a masked email address. Before we would get a proxy email address that property managers could use. It would be like a code, you know, that wouldn't actually be the guest's real email address, but you could use it instead. And now Airbnb has said, no, you must be using our messaging on our platform. We want to control that entire experience. And I think that's interesting because it sort of gives a signal about the way that Airbnb is thinking about the value of its platform, which is to say, we want to control the guest experience. We want to control the messaging. We want to take more responsibility for the reservations that happen on our platform. And we believe that like this is the core value proposition that's going to make us successful and give us the most advantage in the market. And I actually think they're right. I mean, I think that like compared to the other brands out there, they have a stronger presence. Do I think this is going to make a huge material impact on their IPO, or do I think anything they do right now is going to make a big impact on their IPO? Not really. I think that in general, we all think that the industry is pretty healthy and that, you know, they have a new platform. It is wildly successful by all measures, and they're going to lean into that as they IPO. One thing though, if I were a property manager that I would focus on, and you've heard this multiple times from this panel, is making sure that you are not too focused on one platform, because you need to be able to be flexible to switch the primary source of your bookings if you need to. And like Filipa said, like, you know, the difference between having a bunch of different small bookings platforms that you're on and not, it could be the difference between, you know, having 0 and 20% occupancy rate during certain times of this crazy changing time that we're in. So I think that like the message to property managers is the Airbnb IPO, it's there, it's going to happen. I don't think the impact on property managers is going to be that intense, but I do think that as a property manager, people need to focus on making sure that they have a wonderful direct bookings option to get repeat bookings from guests who've stayed with them before, that they have a good marketing program, that they are distributing across all the different bookings channels, including Vrbo, Booking.com, Airbnb, and others, and that they have a real marketing strategy for how they're going to reach the market so that they can kind of overcome some of the turbulent times ahead. So that's what I would focus on. Oh, and one more thing, I just wanted to mention, this is kind of like a pro tip that we've seen from one of our customers, and I think it'd be fun for people to hear about, which is that we've seen some, like a handful of customers do this. They've actually created several listings for the same property, but they're marketing the property in different ways. And so like they'll have one house and they'll say, this is a wonderful place for a family reunion. And it's also a wonderful place for a, like a, you know, I'll say like bachelorette party, or, you know, obviously you don't want to have huge parties in your house, but, or it's a family friendly rental, right? So there are really cool ways that property managers are using the software to get to customers in a better and easier way. I totally agree that standards is an issue in the industry, and I think people just need to like do the best they can, but also if you're just getting started, like talk to other property managers and ask them how they do it, because there are really best practices out there and you can learn from them. But I don't think that the Airbnb IPO is going to have a momentous impact on the way property managers operate.
Thank you, Margo. Well, thank you very much to our panelists. Apologies we couldn't fit in a Q&A, but I think everyone can agree that we had a fantastic, very detailed conversation there. The next webinar in our Rockstrz series will be focusing on which business models will succeed in a post-COVID world. That's on Thursday, the 1st of October 2020. So just note the day change, not our usual Tuesdays. So I hope you can join us then. The link is in the chat just then. Justin? And this is a snapshot of what you can expect from Urban Living Festival in November. Here are some of our fantastic exhibitors and also our festival sponsors, our media partners, and we're very grateful to all of those for their unwavering support throughout this time. For sponsorship opportunities, please do get in touch with my colleague Katie. The details are in the Zoom chat function now. And feel free to also contact us via our various channels. We've got Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So all that's left to say is thank you again for listening, and to all of our speakers, to Margo, to Filipa, to Terry, and to Michael. And we'll see you all next time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.